Hello and welcome. I'm Atreyee Majumder. I teach Sociology and Anthropology and I lead the BA Program Committee at the NLS. With me here today are three members of our Sociology and Anthropology faculty who have designed the Sociology and Anthropology major-minor track in the NLS BA. They are Aniket Nandan, Sudhish, and Kartikeyan Damodaran. We will get started with our conversation right away, and you will get to know them through their research and their teaching and their other philosophies about university life as this conversation progresses. Welcome, everyone. My first question to you is what got you into sociology and or anthropology, and what kept you going? Why didn't you leave, and how did you get in? Anyone can start.
Yeah. So it's a very important question, I would say. So hi, first of all, hi everybody. I'm Aniket and I teach sociology at NLS. And as my colleague Atreyee Majumder asked this question, I think it's a very important question for anybody who engages in a particular discipline. That why did you join this discipline? What made you stick around for so long, right? Thinking about masters, PhD, and thereafter research, and now teaching. It's almost like you have devoted your uh, uh, you know, a large chunk of your life to a particular discipline and try to understand and try to read certain texts from that disciplinary standpoint. So for me, it was very interesting. I grew up in a small town called Patna, Bihar, and then I went to Jawaharlal Nehru University to do my undergrads in languages. And there I came across these disciplines like sociology, politics, philosophy, history, and I used to take optional courses. And then uh, these courses were really interesting because they just opened a new window for me to see the world around, to understand that why and in what context we interact with one another. And how do we interact? What are the ways in which we not just shape ourselves, but the society also is shaping us? So these are the questions which started, provoking something in me. And then I realized that there is one this subject sociology which deals with these questions more in a focused manner, deals with more precisely. And I started doing these courses. By the end of my graduation, I was fully committed to this, to sociology, and I said that fine, this is what I'm going to do, and I'll stick with sociology. But sociology, as like other disciplines as well, it's quite overarching in its sense. So there are multiple lenses which people use in sociology to understand different phenomena, categories, social categories. And for me, caste became one of the social categories which, again, pulled me in within the discipline. I said that, oh, fine, this is very interesting, right? Why people are categorized in a particular way, why there is a certain way in which a pride is cultivated, how people maintain and restore this kind of pride, what happens when there is a sense of othering, right? How people get differentiated from one another, how segregation in society works. So these are the questions which again brought uh, curiosity, and I started working on it. And in my MPhil, my MPhil dissertation was on regional disparities in caste. I wanted to look at that how regions are disparate in nature and what is the role of caste in facilitating and promoting this kind of disparity. And then I went to IIT Madras for my PhD. And there again, my focus was to look at genealogy of one particular caste. But doing that was deeply centered or maybe embedded with understanding the democratic processes through which caste gets uh, or through which caste appears in the forefront of the social interaction. And this is what I did, and it has continued. And now when I teach, so yes, we teach different texts, different lenses in sociology, but we also use certain examples which we have you know, worked on for quite some time, and caste, difference, othering, process of segregation, gender, indigenous identity. These are certain examples which I use when I'm explaining a particular text in class. So sociology became something which has been, not just shaped me, but also shaped my worldview.
Sure, sure. Yeah, Sudhish, do you want to go next?
Sure. So, I mean, I was fascinated with social sciences right from school. I especially remember my 10th standard when something happened and it looked like social sciences could explain what was happening to me and around me. But after a brief interlude with PCMB, I returned to social sciences with my undergrad. And even there, I mean, readings in gender studies, in queer studies, on caste, help me understand myself and the world around me. And a lot of these readings were rooted in the disciplines of sociology and anthropology. Um, and it was like, a window had opened and light had come in. Um, and that I found extremely powerful. Uh, so I continued that journey with my master's and my PhD. And like Aniket said, the power of these disciplines in helping us explain phenomena around us is what really drew me to these subjects. So that's about it for me.
Thanks. Karthikeyan?
Right. So in my case, also it's more like what Sudhish and Aniket were saying. It's like right from my, it's like school days. I was much more inclined towards social sciences than it's like mathematics or other biological sciences. And also for me, it's like it was more about the kind of subjective experiences, right? That things happening around me, and this was like it's like particularly growing up in the sort of parts of 80s and early 90s. A lot of things were happening politically, the place that I come from. This was also the time when it's like a certain sense of political consciousness, particularly it's like by the end of my schooling and it's like getting into college. But then it's like since I'm coming from a very small like comparatively it's like smaller town where you know um, uh, largely physical sciences, biological sciences, it's like computer science, engineering. So engineering and medicine was supposed to be the sort of, it's like stable subjects that a lot of them wanted to opt for. So initially, it's like for me, it was like I was sort of, it's like moved a bit towards economics and management and things like that. And for me, it was almost like at a later stage that, it's like, I got the opportunity, and then it's like I had the opportunity to go to Calcutta, where actually it's like this notion about it's like the world around us, and particularly it's like the things that is happening, both politically and also it's like when it comes to the questions of your own identity and all these things. So for me it's like at any point of time it's like social sciences. Would have been my first choice, and I'm happy that it's like later also, though it happened a little bit later in my career, but it's like my experiences, both it's like I also worked as a journalist, so all these things combined gave me an opportunity to get into a PhD in UK. And I was it's like all these past experiences, it's like right from growing up in a sort of a segregated neighborhood, questions of caste, all these things, it's like I was able to work around that. And it's like so for me it's social sciences is something it's like which is very close to my heart, and particularly both sociology and anthropology, because my field work during my PhD times was almost like a 15-month ethnography that I did, staying in a multi-sited, it's like ethnography, different villages, trying to get close to people, what they do, what they think, how they organize, how they sort of go about their everyday lives. So it was something that was really phenomenal for me to sort of be part of those things. And so social sciences was always my first choice.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, in my case, of course, my colleagues know here, but some of our viewers may not know that I was a law student in the very same institution, the NLS, and while I was a legal researcher in Delhi, as part of a public interest legal office, used to be sent to gather data that becomes evidence for the basis of PILs. So for that, to gather that information or evidence, I used to have to go and hang out with social movements. So I had to gather all this information, and for which I had to talk to kind of leaders of social movements. I used to go to the Delhi Forum, and people who led important civil society organizations in the North Indian region, Delhi and the North Indian region. And that made me think at some point that if I had to go back to academia, which I did want to do, but I wasn't sure in what discipline, and I thought, I enjoy this, being outside in the world, talking to a disparate range of people, and not knowing what you will find. Every day is exciting. Every moment is where throws a surprise, and that really was my kind of fulcrum on the basis of which I made my choice between political science and anthropology. I was like, I can't only crunch data and sit in a library. That, not that that's not important, but my strengths were, I felt, were in being out in the world, and it's completely by accident that I came to anthropology, and I haven't, thank God, regretted it. It's been a long association. So my second question, I'll move track a little bit. All of you are now, I know about Sudhish's postdoctoral research, and so all of you have left your PhDs behind. Your PhDs are done and dusted. What are you working on these days? What is your current research? What are the questions it throws up? What are the methods you're using? And what are some of the topics and themes that you're engaging with in the course of your current research? If you want to frame it in the context of your larger intellectual journey, that's also fine. If you can say something to this question.
The first thing which I'm working on, and it's been quite some time that um, I've been attached to it, is my monograph, my book. So this is directly coming from my PhD dissertation. So this is what this should come in a year or so. So this is what I'm expecting. Fingers crossed. The other ideas which I have looked at is looking at citizenship, bureaucracy. Um, so recently, I published one of the articles in South Asia where we were looking at Tripura, and Tripura is a state which borders with Bangladesh. So there is a lot of migration history which is associated with Tripura. And then this is what we did, and it got published. The other key things which I'm really interested in to understand the political economy of caste. So my idea of looking at caste comes from its interaction with market and the politics, and how does market and politics shape caste and vis-a-vis? Like how does caste shape markets and politics? This is again something which is forthcoming, and I'm working on it. Apart from this, which something which I've recently written on public platforms like Scroll and Deccan Herald and other places is like I'm also interested in understanding and commenting on the recent trends uh, in understanding gender non-binary discourse. So these are a few things which I've been working on, and it keeps me in touch with the larger discourse, be it on gender, be it on caste, be it on migration, or the political economy of a certain region in that context.
Great, thanks. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Satish.
Yeah, I'll approach the question slightly differently by telling you how my research topics developed, to just communicate to students that research is an iterative process, and it takes a while for our research projects to take the shape that they have today. And it's also incidentally one of the reasons why the BA program is exciting, because we have a fourth year for just doing research. And you get the degree of BA honors with research. So when I was doing my first master's, the Forest Rights Act was a lot in the news. It had been almost 6 years after the legislation had come out, and it was time to do an evaluation. But I was not interested in a mere evaluation of an act on the ground. I was interested in trying to understand what a law does to people. There was this new act that gave people, the Adivasis and other traditional forest dwellers, uh, rights over land that had fought for a long time. So that's when I went to Wayanad in Kerala, the district that I work in. And ever since, I've visited that place multiple times, several times. Um, so it initially started with an inquiry into how people felt about the act, how they used it in their everyday lives as a weapon, as an instrument of seeking citizenship rights. But when I did my second master's, I again developed it because I understood that there is more to the story. It is not just a law which gave people some rights, it is also becoming a medium through which identities were being solidified. So I try to look at this piece of legislation through the lens of the politics of recognition versus redistribution. Um, but then, I again mulled over the topic, went to Wayanad a couple of times. It was slowly getting, what we call as an ethnographic character. It is when you start spending a lot of time in the field side with the people and try to understand their lives intimately. And then I understood that the real story is actually the land beneath the trees. It's not really the forest, but the land. So the politics of land then excited me. Uh, and I continue to work with the same communities. And for my doctoral research, I looked at how land in Wayanad, including the forests as well as the farms, were undergoing rapid land use changes. And that is impacting people's lives very closely. People, the Adivasi communities I was working with were asking for land because historically they had been deprived of land. So it was not just about forests, but this larger entity called land. And it turned a bit more anthropological when I started to look at what land was and what it meant for people in their everyday lives. So that's the first project that I'm continuing to work on, that I follow land struggles, trying to understand why are people asking for land, especially in a time when there is a severe agrarian crisis and farming is not going to hold a lot of future prospects, but land still holds a lot of meaning for people. Again, continuing with the same topic, I realized that I'm missing the ecological angle. So now I'm adding an environmental angle into the mix. And that's where my second project comes, where I'm looking at people's relationship with land through the perspective of planetary health, which means that the Earth's health, broadly defined, and our health are very crucially interlinked. And the idea of planetary health comes from the arena, the realm of the scientists, actually. It was a Lancet report, which is a major scientific magazine that put forward the idea. But their understanding of the Earth's health was, in that sense, very geological, physical, and very scientific. And here I'm trying to say with my colleagues from other universities that health is not just physical. It has a very sociological dimension to it. Our relationship with our environment seriously impacts our sense of well-being, and that it is important to look at that. And to completely understand what's going on. We talk about climate change, but we restrict it to changes in temperature, rainfall. We also need to look at the deep fissures it is producing in people's lives, the cultural changes that it produces, because ultimately people live in societies, and a phenomenon like climate change is going to impact their everyday lives very closely. So that's my second project.
Nice. Thanks. Karthikeyan?
For me also, it's like it was, my research also stems from this understanding that what was happening around me. It's like my right from my days. It's like, and this was like the time in the 90s. That a lot of caste violence that was happening in and around the places that we were living, and particularly it's like the in my village, and it's like nearby places, and it was something that has become almost like a phenomenon that happens very regularly for almost for like 2 to 3 years. This was from 1995, 96, that point of time. And this regularly, it's like there used to be caste clashes between, it's like two, three different groups. And this caste antagonism is something that is there for almost a period of time. It's like more than close to almost a century. But all of a sudden in the 90s, it took a very different turn. So these are, it's like, castes which were, for example, the castes, particularly, it's like among the Dalits, they were starting to hit back. And this actually, it's like resulted in more large scale violence. And I always, it's like sort of wanted to come back, it's like whenever I get an opportunity, and particularly, it's like for my PhD, I took that particular question because these were things that were happening around us. So my PhD project was to look at, it's like particularly in terms of political claim making, and in terms of, it's like claiming access to public spaces and all these things, it's like there's this history of antagonism between two different caste groups, and then, it's like how it translates into violence. So I was just looking at those, how caste operates both in, it's like through episodic events, but also through everyday, it's like in everyday forms. So
Sure.
particularly, it's like when it comes to the marginalized castes, how they were trying to sort of, question their marginality through occupation of public space, or through, it's like claiming a certain sort of, it's like a certain right over common property access and things like that, how these has been resulting in large scale violence. So I was just mapping those things. And I mean, apart from that, it's like my interests or a little bit sort of, it's like in and around caste, but I also sort of very lately, but I have already written something on the question of caste in films. The question of caste in the Tamil context is actually very important, because, it's like Tamil Nadu has this facade of being this state which focuses more on social justice and things like that. But it is always, it's like it has always been inimical to the Dalit question. So so we very recently have this, it's like Dalit wave of films. So my current research sort of touches upon that, because I have already, it's like written a little bit on caste in Tamil films. But now I'm just looking at this particular, it's like this Dalit wave in Tamil cinema. It's more like the Marathi wave. So I'm just looking at how, so earlier it was more about, so Dalits were part of certain, it's like characterization, right? But now it is more or less, it's like taking a different turn, where, it's like you openly have Dalit protagonists, the storyline carries them. So what sort of changes that it has brought, in terms of both within the industry and also in terms of acceptance, so yeah, and also in terms of popular culture as a whole, particularly, it's like this urban subcultures. So there is a lot of the, churning that is happening in terms of when it comes to consumption of popular culture, particularly in relation to songs. So more, influenced largely by the black culture of hip hop, rap. There is a sort of, it's like there is something called Ghana songs, right, which is part of the urban, subculture, particularly, it's like from Chennai, and it is largely, it's like a kind of a performance that Dalits used to be, an integral part of it, and how, the commercialization and how it has slowly entered the mainstream film, and what sort of changes that it is bringing. So I'm currently working on these things, both the Dalit wave and the significant changes in terms of, popular culture, consumption and things like that.
Which is also kind of intersection between cultural studies
Yes,
or performance
yes,
studies
exactly.
and
Yes,
also anthropology and
and
sociology, right?
anthropology and social. Yes, definitely.
Right, right. And so different disciplines come to intertwine
Yes,
with our
yes,
main discipline in
yes,
interesting ways.
exactly.
History does, political science does, from time to time, film and cinema studies do, as in your project, performance studies, as in is in my current research. So thanks for those responses. My last question is we have now a sociology and anthropology major minor track, which teaches something called social forces, something on social theory and methods, which teaches some key books, kind of great books in that great books kind of tradition in sociology and anthropology, which seeks to teach a range of electives beginning from critical agrarian studies to caste and gender and feminist theory, etc., and all the way up to film and popular culture. This has come together because of this group that some of whom are here today. What is the most exciting thing about it? What excites you about it?
For me, the reading text is very exciting. I'm really excited
So
about
the
that.
great books one, the one big book.
The great books, yes. So that's something which is really exciting to me. And
so we have a course for our viewers who don't know yet. We have a course in the core list of the sociology and anthropology major, where you read one text in full and you read some other text in relation to that main text. That's the course that Aniket is referring to. So go on, Aniket.
Yeah, so recently I offered an elective at NLS. This elective was largely, again, very closely aligned to my research on market and the relationship between caste and political economy and so on and so on. So there what I did that we discussed one particular text for almost half of the sessions of the course, and then we substantiated with the text which are either commenting on it, borrowing, building from that particular text, or critiquing that certain text in that minute. So this is what I did, and this inspired me to also see that okay, this actually really worked, and this was something which gave a broader perspective about that in what context a writer writes, why these contexts are important to analyze, right? How these contexts are shaping the contemporary understanding of a particular phenomena, right?
Yeah.
So this is what I thought that would be very interesting, and I'm really excited about it. So one of the examples which I would give is that, for example, Marcel Mauss, another anthropologist who has been known for his understanding the exchange between human beings in form of gifts, right? So why do you gift a particular person? Does gift has a value? What kind of value does a gift has? Is gift something which is returned or can be returned? Right? These are the questions, and then placing it within the larger conceptions of everyday exchange which happens between social world. So this is why this course makes me really excited. Apart from this, the course on social organization, definitely the course on law, society, and the state. And as a sociologist, we can't deny the ever pervasive presence of social forces. So these are the few courses which are really, really exciting for me. Yeah.
Right. Thanks. Anybody else wants to jump in?
So I would say, I second Aniket in whatever he said. Also, that I think the overall program maintains a very nice balance between theory and more practice-oriented courses. The practice-oriented courses are about gaining practical skills that students, will be equipped with to get into the real world and face the job market. But it kind of balances it out with the more rigorous theory courses. The courses that Aniket mentioned are all pointing towards rigorous training and handholding in theory from a very early age in a person's post-school career. And I think that is a core feature of our program, to provide world-class training in reading theory at a very young age is going to be one of the best parts of it, in my view. And that links to the element that I mentioned earlier, the fourth year for research, those who are interested in it. By the time you enter the fourth year, you will be, I'm very confident, fully prepared to kind of engage in rigorous research, both in fieldwork as well as in new theorization.
And ask complex questions by the time they enter the fourth year. And I totally agree with Sudesh as part of this team that theory and practice should not be constantly segregated in the way that they are. And our course manages to find a balance between the two. Karthikeyan, you've been waiting. Sorry.
Yes, I also more or less agree with both what Sudesh and Aniket were saying, right? So this question of, it's like trying to give a proper, good mix of both theory and practice, and getting them exposed at a very young age, because, it's like obviously you have to be very, the moment you, get that good exposure to dense theoretical texts and things like that, it goes with you, for a long period of time. It's like so that it's like when it comes to understanding things empirically, it helps you in a longer way. And the other thing is that it's like, I mean, it's also more to do with being multidisciplinary. It's not that it's like we are confining ourselves to one particular discipline. So we sort of it's like give and take. So and it is designed in a way that the students will get exposure to other disciplines, in a more sort of broader way. So I mean, that particular aspect of it is very interesting, and this will actually it's like be very fruitful for the students.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So thanks everyone for taking the time to talk to me today. And we heard some lovely responses on how sociology is done, why you all picked up sociology across in your various biographies, and how your research has progressed over the last 10 or 20 years. So thanks so much. I'll say have a good night. Goodbye here. And your students, your prospective students who are waiting to watch this so that they can enter your classroom and have various kinds of complicated conversations with you in the classroom and beyond. So thanks again and have a good night.